Good morning and welcome, my dear students, physicians, surgeons, and neuroscientists. This lecture is based on the introduction of neuroanatomy or general neuroanatomy. What is general anatomy? People treat this science as a dangerous science, or some people say it is poisonous science because initially this science may overwhelm by its intricacy, but be patient. Treat neurosciences as a foreign language. First, master in grammar and vocabulary, and then be fluent in spoken the foreign language. First, I will deal with the introduction. Of neuroanatomy. Simply, it is a stimuli response system of the body which is having a functional and structural unit as a neuron or nervous cell. So it is a stimuli response system having neuron or cell body as its structural and functional unit. So neuroanatomy is a science of study of nervous system, stimuli response system of body, and it is having a functional and structural unit as a neuron or nervous cell. Nervous system is the most complex product of biological evolution. So I will use 4 terms to describe the nervous system or the neuroanatomy. These are most complex, most mysterious, most investigated, you can use widely or most investigated, but least understood. So most complex system, most mysterious system of the body, widely investigated but least understood system of the human body. So nervous system is most complex product of biological evolution. Why it is so important? Right? Because it is having the highest system, the highest seat of consciousness, highest seat of memory, learning, intelligence and emotions, the brain. So divisions of nervous system. The nervous system of the human body is divided in 2 major parts. One is central nervous system and other is peripheral nervous system. The central nervous system is a part of nervous system which is housed by the bony cavities. Either it may be cranium or it may be vertebral canal. So central nervous system is again divided in two parts. It is central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. So central nervous system is a part of nervous system which is housed by the bony cavities. Either it may be cranium for brain or it may be vertebral canal for the spinal cord. So central nervous system is again divided in two major parts: the brain and the spinal cord. To make the things very easy, the main function of the brain and nervous system is protection of the itself or the protection of the body. So it is having the most advantageous position in the body, that is uppermost part of the head in cranial cavity, which can be rotated by 140 degree on neck, and it is having special senses around it like vision, hearing, balance, olfaction and taste. So central nervous system is again divided in two parts: the brain and spinal cord. The anterior part and broad part of the central nervous system, which is lying inside the cranium, is brain. The brain is again divided in three parts: forebrain, midbrain and hindbrain. It is again divided in forebrain, midbrain and the hindbrain. Or in other words, I can say it is divided in cerebrum, cerebellum, diencephalon and the brain stem. So brain is divided in forebrain, midbrain, hindbrain. Forebrain is having cerebrum and the diencephalon part. Midbrain is most primitive part of the brain, which is having only midbrain, smallest part of the brain, and hindbrain, which is having medulla, pons and cerebellum. So again, CNS is divided in brain and spinal cord, and brain is again divided in forebrain, midbrain and hindbrain. Spinal cord, it is a cylindrical structure. It is a long cylindrical structure and forming the caudal part of the brain, and it is residing inside the vertebral canal. So on the inferior posterior most part of the brain starts the spinal cord, which is a cylindrical long structure and housed by the vertebral canal, and it is the posterior caudal part of the brain housed by vertebral canal, As I have already told that the CNS is having the highest system or highest seat of the consciousness, learning, memory, intellectuality, intelligence and emotions. So it needs a great protection. So it is protected by the cranium and vertebral canal. On the other hand, there is peripheral nervous system which is having protection by the fascia, skin, muscles and the organs which are supplied by the peripheral nervous system. It is not having a bony cavity. So peripheral nervous system is divided into parts. Again, it is having nerves and it is having ganglia. So peripheral nervous system is having nerves and it is having ganglia. What is a nerve? Simply, nerve is an axon of the neurons and it supplies the peripheral organs, the innervated parts of the periphery, that is skin, muscles, joints, tendons and visceral parts like GIT, lungs, heart and urogenital systems. These all parts of the body are innervated by these peripheral nerves. So peripheral nervous system is having nerves. Nerves are again of three types. There are cranial nerves. There are 12 pairs of cranial nerves. And there are spinal nerves. "31 pairs of spinal nerves are there, and there are subsplanchnic nerves, subsplanchnic nerves are also known as autonomic nerves. So cranial nerves are the nerves emerging from the foramina in the cranium and these are attached to the brain, that is either these are attached to the cerebrum or attached to diencephalon or the brain stem. Spinal nerves which are attached to the lateral part of the spinal cord, there are 31 pairs of spinal nerves. 8 pairs are in cervical region, 12 pairs in thoracic region, 5 in lumbar, 5 in sacral and 1 nerve is known as coccygeal nerve. Subsplanchnic nerves are coming from the spinal nerves and these are supplying the urogenital system or gastrointestinal system. There are ganglia. There are 3 types of ganglia. There are sensory ganglia. These ganglia are related to the sensory nerves, that is spinal nerves. All spinal nerves are mixed nerves having a sensory and a motor root. So all sensory ganglia are related to the spinal nerves. So dorsal root ganglia, DRG. Second type of ganglia are sensory ganglia of cranial nerves. So second type is sensory ganglia. These sensory ganglia of cranial nerve are related to the 5th, 7th, 9th and 10th cranial nerves. 8th cranial nerves is also having a sensory ganglia. Third type of ganglia are motor ganglia, and these motor ganglia are related to the autonomic nervous system, and these ganglia are having postganglionic sympathetic or parasympathetic fibers, which we will deal in a separate lecture. So ganglia are sensory, related to the dorsal root ganglia of the spinal nerves. These are 31 pairs of dorsal root ganglia. All sensory fibers coming from the periphery will having its cell body in dorsal root ganglia. The sensory ganglia of cranial nerves, these are related to 5th, 7th, 8th, 9th and 10th cranial nerves, and the motor ganglia are autonomic ganglia related to the postganglionic parasympathetic or postganglionic sympathetic neurons. So again I am repeating the classification or divisions of nervous system. It is having a central part and a peripheral part. Central nervous system is again having two parts. One is brain, which is housed by the cranium, and other is spinal cord, housed by the vertebral canal. And peripheral nervous system is having nerves and ganglia. The nerves are 12 pairs of cranial nerves, 31 pairs of spinal nerves, and the subclinic nerves, which are the autonomic nerves. And other part of the peripheral nervous system is ganglia, and it is having sensory and motor ganglia. Sensory ganglia are again of two types. One is the dorsal root ganglia and other type is cranial sensory ganglia. The second type is motor, and it is having the autonomic neurons and related to the postganglionic fibers of the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. Now I will talk about the microanatomy of the nervous system, how this nervous system is formed. Basically the nervous system is formed by two types of cells or two types of tissues. There are two types of cells, microanatomy of nervous system. So it is having two types of cells. One is neuronal cells or nerve cells, or a second type is non-neuronal cells or non-nervous cells. These cells, non-neuronal or non-nervous cells, also known as glial cells. Glial cells. These are the oligodendroglial cell, or also known as oligodendrocytes, astrocytes. I will talk in detail about oligodendrocytes during the myelination of the axons. I will talk in detail about astrocytes when I will talk about the blood-brain barrier, and Third is ependymal cells. I will talk in detail about ependymal cells when I will talk about the ventricular system of the CNS. So, non-neuronal cells are of different types: oligodendroglial cells or oligodendrocytes, astrocytes, and the ependymal cells. Neuronal cells or nerve cells are having different types. There are three major types of nervous cells or neurons on anatomical basis or on the basis of their processes. These are: neuronal cell is having mainly a body, also known as soma, or also known as perikaryon, and it is having a small and long processes known as neurites. So neuronal cells are having a soma, also known as perikaryon, or also known as body, and it is having a small and long processes known as neurites. There are two types of neurites. One is dendrite, other is axon. So nerve cell is divided in different types on the basis of their processes, types of neurons. There are unipolar, having a single process. It is having a single process. The other type, that is pseudo-unipolar. Previously, both were treated as different types. One was unipolar and other was pseudo-unipolar. But in modern neurosciences and modern neuroanatomy, these both are treated as unipolar. But frankly speaking, unipolar is having a single process, and it is found only in the mesencephalic nucleus of the trigeminal nuclear complex. Only part of trigeminal nuclear complex which is in the midbrain is having unipolar neurons. I will draw the diagram of the unipolar neuron and how it differs from the pseudo-unipolar neuron. This is cell body, and it is having axon. This is myelin sheath, which I will talk later. So this is cell body of unipolar, which is circular or round in shape, and it is having a single axon. This is seen only in the mesencephalic nucleus or mesencephalic part of trigeminal nuclear complex. It is having a large central nucleus and nucleolus. On the other hand, here it is single process divided in two parts and form a T-shaped structure on the its process. which is divided in two parts. Here is single process and it is divided in two parts. So it is having a nucleus, and cell body or soma is again circular or round in shape, and it is having a peripheral process and it is having a central process. This type of neuron is seen in mesencephalic part of the trigeminal nucleus complex, and this type of neuron, that is known as unipolar or also known as pseudo unipolar, is seen in the dorsal root ganglion of the all spinal nerves and the sensory ganglion of the cranial nerves. Other varieties: bipolar, only 0.5% of total neurons of the nervous system are of unipolar type, and bipolar is very rare, and only 0.5% of total neurons are of bipolar. This type of neuron is having two processes, and it is having a ovoid soma or perikaryon or cell body. So it is having a ovoid cell body and two processes. This type of neuron, that is bipolar neuron, it is seen in the retina, in olfactory mucosa, and in taste buds, and in cochlear and semicircular canal part of the internal ear. So very rare type is bipolar, very rare type is unipolar, which is seen only in mesencephalic nucleus, and this type is seen in the retina, in the olfactory mucosa, in the internal ear, that is cochlea and semicircular canals. The third type, very common, is multipolar. .5% of neurons of the nervous system are multipolar type of neurons. These are having multiple processes, sometimes more than 1,000 processes on these cells, especially in the cerebellum and cerebrum, where multiple connections are formed between the neurons. Always remember, neurons are contiguous, never continuous. These are having multiple processes which are divided in many branches, and these are having more than 1,000 connections between neurons known as synapses, which I will talk later, and it is having a efferent part known as axon and multiple efferent parts. This is myelin sheath. So it is having many small processes known as dendrites. Dendrites are again having multiple branches, and these are tapering parts of the neurites, and here is a single axon which is long and efferent part of the neuron, and these are afferent parts bringing information or action potential towards the cell body, and it is carrying away the information or action potential from the nervous cell or soma. So there are 99.5% neurons in the nervous system are multipolar, and 99.5% out of them are in the CNS, and less than 0.5% are seen in the PNS, in the autonomic ganglia that are sympathetic or parasympathetic ganglion. So peripheral nervous system is having multipolar neurons in the sympathetic and parasympathetic ganglia. These are only less than 0.5% of the total multipolar neurons, and 99.5% or more than 99.5% of the multipolar neurons are seen in the central nervous system. This was the anatomical classification of the neurons. Now I will deal with the functional classification of the neurons. Functional classification. There are three types of neurons. Functionally, these are the sensory neurons, the motor neurons, and the interneurons. So what is a sensory neuron? A sensory neuron is a neuron which is bringing the sensation from the internal and external milieu of the human body, and this brings this impulse or action potential towards the central nervous system, and it is having different orders of neurons. It is having first order neuron or primary neurons, which is bringing the sensation from the skin, tendons, ligaments, joints and the viscera towards the sensory ganglion of the cranial nerve or the sensory root ganglion or dorsal root ganglion of the spinal nerves. The central process of this dorsal root ganglion or the cranial root ganglion will relay the action potential in the second order neuron, which may be inside the dorsal root of the or dorsal horn of the spinal cord or in the brainstem. From the hypothalamus or from the thalamus, from the diencephalon, third order neuron arises, and these third order neuron will bring the information of the or the action potential to the highest center of the sensory relay, that is cerebral cortex. So when we will talk about the sensory neurons, there is first order neuron, second order neuron or third order neuron. First order will be in the dorsal root ganglion or in the cranial sensory ganglion. Second order is inside the dorsal horn of the spinal cord or inside the brainstem, and third order neuron is seen in the thalamus. When we will talk about the motor neuron is bringing the command for the effector organs, that may be muscle or a gland. These are bringing the impulse or action potential towards the effector organ from the CNS to the effector organ. It may be a muscle or it may be a gland.